the needs of the family and the owners have to be directed towards the business. And if they're not, if they're directed towards where's my future, you've got conflicts and problems.
The goals of the company need to be paramount in running a business like Raley's, a large size business.
Yeah. And sometimes your personal needs cloud judgment or slow decisions down. And like I learned that when I was involved in Prosper Business Magazine, a business I knew nothing about. Highly detailed business, didn't know, wasn't sure, wanted it to be successful, so I slowed the decision making down or don't make the decision. And it's detrimental to the business. You can't do that. So the business has to be free to move forward. It's got to have management that can go forward and do what they want. And everybody has to trust the management team. In this case, I'm not sure they trusted the management team because I was their brother. Yeah.
So I guess I'm thinking of the takeaway here is a board needs to be empowering to the management team or they need to change out the management. I mean, is that kind of the thing?
Yeah. In this case, that was hard to do because it was a family member.
Yeah. Okay. Anything you would have done differently there?
I'm not sure that it was the best decision to have all five of us on the board. And in fact, two of them dropped off by themselves, but they replaced themselves with in-laws, which exacerbated the problem.
Did you know that 70% of family-owned businesses do not survive past the second generation? And I don't know, only a few make it to the third. And I think it's probably true that most family businesses don't really even think about a succession plan and how that's gonna happen. And I think that's a problem. And I think today we are going to discover the answer to that problem. I mean, when you have a guy like Mike Teel, he is the chief visionary officer of Raley's, the owner of Raley's Supermarkets. You guys have been in business 85 years. It's third generation. And I mean, I think most people by any measure would consider you the most successful business in the region. So today we're going to learn about the generational issues associated with family business. And a lot of us wonder about nepotism and how do you avoid that? And also a plan. I mean, is planning helpful, and how do you do that in family business? So today we're going to be talking about that with the Chief Visionary Officer of Raley's, Mike Teel. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing great, but that's a lot of ground to cover. But it's my favorite subjects.
Okay, well let's dive in. So for those people who might not know you or Raley's yet, maybe just give us a quick idea of what this family business looks like.
Boy, what rocks are they living under if they don't know what Raley's is? Maybe they're new to the region, though, huh?
Yes, could be.
Yeah, because we're getting a lot of new people in Sacramento.
But I mean, size. What's the size, number of employees? I mean, what does the business look like today? We know you're a
don't quote
supermarket
me on these
chain.
because these are. I'm not the numbers guy. I'm the visionary guy, remember?
Perfect.
But we're about 128, 29 stores, a little over 3.2 or 3.3 billion in top sales, retail sales, probably a little over 12,000 employees. That's a lot of people we pay every week,
12,
a lot of people we affect by our decisions day in and day out. We take that job seriously, by the way.
That's a lot of responsibility because last time you were on the show, you really stood out to me as one of the most authentic and humble people that I had ever had on, that I've ever really met in business. So seriously, Mike, he's joking now. He's joking. He thinks I'm maybe playing around, but seriously, you were able to kind of share it all with us. So we're hoping that we can kind of get that today as well. So you're in this family business. It's third generation. Challenges. We talked about that at the beginning. What challenges are associated with being in this enormous responsibility, yet you've got a family business that you are taking on?
Gosh, where would I start? Boy, there's a day-to-day operations, the challenges of an ever-changing world, more complex. Used to be we could talk to our customers via television, the nightly news. Who watches that anymore? Yeah. Nobody. So it's really hard to get the message out. And that's really important because we have to change in order to be relevant. And when you change, how do you get that message out to your customers? You know, they're busy. They walk through the stores. They go through fast. The message isn't always clear. So we have to try new and innovative ways to touch our customers. This is one, social media. So just the day-to-day operations of the business and trying to touch the customer, help them understand why it's in their best interest or why they might want to engage with Raley's. That's probably our biggest challenge. The next biggest challenge is finding a group of people who are motivated on a mission. We've become a purpose-driven company. We have a mission and a purpose. It's what keeps me engaged. It's why I go to work, and I want it to be why all 12,000 people go to work day in and day out, because we really want to make a change in people's health. And we want to see the way the world eats change for the better. And that's not an easy task because it's challenging. And so I spend a lot of time on that.
Well, let's take those two items and let's put them to the side for a second because I want to get back to these. But you're a family business and third generation. Maybe talk to us about these different changes. You had to continue to be innovative in order to keep up with society and continue to grow. But that's and today is no different.
Right. It's not. And as companies mature and grow, oftentimes they become less innovative. They don't have that flexibility. They kind of get this structure that, holds them back and keeps them safe. And breaking those molds is one of the challenges. I think if I had any probably skill that helped set me apart, it was being a little bit of a maverick and always wanting to be different. And that helped me kind of shake the organization a couple of times in different ways based on what I felt were the perceptions that needed to be shaken.
Okay, so the business was started by your grandfather, and
85 years
then
ago.
Who was the next CEO after your grandfather? Who was handed down?
Chuck Collins, my mentor.
Your mentor. And then you came up, when you made your first big change, when you, I guess, made your big presence into the company, what did that look like?
It was changing succession of a management team. I was interjected into a graying management team of about 6 people who had literally grown up in the business, worked in the stores.
And they liked it how it was.
They liked it how it was, yeah. But fortunately, they were aging, and they realized they were on the way. So what we had to do is come up with a strategic plan that kind of address the changing marketplaces and help us succeed that management team to the next level. So that was really my first mark, is one by one retiring the executives and replacing them with new people. It was the first time we hired, it was the first time we hired an outside executive.
Interesting. So you had left and got you had grew up in the family business at some level and then went on to have success in some other areas and then came back. What brought you back? Was it the need for the change for the family?
No, when I left the first time, Mark, I really didn't think I was capable of living up to what I saw as leaders of the company. My father, my grandfather, Chuck Collins, my soon-to-be mentor, and other executives, I just didn't feel like I could measure up to any of that. And so when I left the company and moved out of the region, went to Seattle and got involved in a number of different businesses, I made the bad decision of thinking I could be a salesperson, and that did not work out. Cold calling was not my cup of tea. And I had to learn, systematically, where was my niche? Where were my skill sets? And after 6 years and many different jobs, I learned a couple of things. And number one, I learned I was no different than those executives that I thought were like gods to me. They had their problems, and we got dressed in the morning the same way. And I learned that I had developed some skills and research and how to stand up in front of a group and use what was then a foil to make a presentation to a group of people. I learned how to go to the library because there was no internet and do research and build business plans. And that all taught me I had some skills because I never saw anybody in that company stand in front of a table and give a presentation. And I thought, you know what, I can bring some of these skill sets to Raley. So when I came back, when I was asked to come back to the business by the family, I started exercising those skills, and I realized that, hey, I'm a leader too, and I can do this.
Yeah, so the family saw that their management team was old. There was really no heir apparent, and enter Mike Teel.
Yeah.
And, I mean, what's the emotion in coming in? What did you do besides create the business plan? Did you have to shake things up?
I didn't create the business plan. I gathered people together to help me create that business plan using their expertise because they had a whole lot more. They grew up in the business, and I through osmosis learned a lot from listening and sitting around the dinner table at night. So I had it in my blood a little bit. It was intuitive to me. But you still had to use people who were experts in the areas. Like, I didn't like details. I didn't want to get down into the numbers and go. So I had to learn how to listen to people and determine what were they really saying, what's factual and what's not factual. And fortunately, I'm kind of a random thinker. I think through associations. So that kind of environment is really good for me, listening to other people debate and present different ideas, and then selecting the ideas that I think the group can adhere to and get behind. And I think that's one of the key successes of management is creating a coalition and then moving forward and not being afraid to point out, when something isn't quite right.
So your management style then, I mean, how would you describe your management style? More of a facilitator than authoritarian?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I hate conflict.
Yeah,
I do it when I had to. That's a skill you have to learn, but I don't like it. I avoid it at all costs. Ask my wife.
So, but when you have to make these big decisions, you have to make some strategic decisions, pivots. You've had to make some of those at Raley's. Talk to us about the first big decision you had to make that was maybe, one of those ones that kind of kept you up at night, but you went in on that and you had to kind of go with, I don't know, your gut or your decision-making, process.
Well, it depends on which career you're asking.
Okay, I'm thinking about in Raley's when you came back.
No, but I had, when I came back?
Yeah.
The first time?
Yes.
Okay. The first time. I think learning to take a risk. So, for example, putting somebody in charge of an area they really had no experience in. So moving somebody from, say, operations and putting them in charge of sales and merchandising, that was a big risk. They didn't know, and they could make, our business is really fast, reactive business. When you change something, you hear about it from the customer, or you don't, and they leave, or your volume goes up or down. So it's a very reactive business, and could have been a bad mistake. But it actually worked out well because that individual had to learn the business. They had to ask questions. They had to understand what they were doing, and they weren't confined by a box of this is how we do it. And so it helped crack open silos that had been in that side of the business, the merchandising sales side of the business, and it helped the operations because we had somebody new go into the operations. So breaking down silos was very important.
How do you do that? How do you break down the silos, especially in a family business? I'm picturing this family business with, at the time, who were the owners of the business at that time?
My parents.
Your parents were, and then you have to make some, but they were retiring or retired?
They were retiring.
Yeah, and you had come back and we're going to make some changes in the business. So you had to break down the walls within the business, not really outside with the ownership structure, not with the owners. The owners you had the back of your mom and dad. Your mom and dad had your back on this, and you had to go internally and make the changes in the organization.
I had the back of the CEO,
who
wasn't a family member. he's the one that kind of, I'll never forget this day. I had probably been working, I had been returned, and I'd worked with probably almost every aspect of the business from a senior executive level, operations, then merchandising, then personnel, then finance, and then I was working with the CEO. And we were doing an interview. He agreed to do an interview for a trade magazine, Supermarket News, at the time. And during that interview, he revealed that I was going to be the next CEO.
Oh, and you didn't know that at that time? You were not expecting that?
Well, I had returned to the company with that hope. In fact, that was one of the conditions, that you'd let me become the president of the company someday. And my parents said, well, that's dependent on you. You can go as high and far as your abilities will take you, but it's dependent upon you and your performance. And when he said that, my life changed, because it was a public, it was like night and day. It was really weird the next day.
That you were the heir apparent and it was public.
Yeah.
So he had your back, right? So
that
sounds like a great thing, though. Did it change in a great way or in a more difficult way?
It became scary for me, actually, for a while. But
what were you scared of?
Making the wrong decision, being wrong, being exposed as not able to do something. I think that was probably Would you say that it was more concerned about letting your parents down, or really your own, just maybe letting
society?
myself down?
Oh.
And I mean, when I came back that first time, I realized that it was more than just trying to become the president of a company. I believe at that time I knew that everything my family had was because of 12,000 employees who had worked for 25, 30 years in the business. And so there was a sense of responsibility that I carried in not wanting to let down the organization and see sales drop was a fearful thing that you have to be aware of at all times. And so I think that was probably it. But like you said, my parents, they stood in the background. They really didn't get engaged. They weren't challenging me. They weren't even in meetings. They just let me run. And so did the CEO. He stayed in his office, and he let me run the meetings and make decisions. And only once in that probably 10-year time frame did he ever step in and change a decision that I made.
So you think that's the right way? Let's say for the next person that's listening here, you've got somebody in, you're bringing them in, they're the heir apparent, mom and dad have decided to kind of be on the sidelines a little bit. I mean, is that the right decision? Is there anything that you would do differently there?
No, I think it was the right decision in our case, and I know there's situations where that might not be the case. I would find it difficult with my children.
Okay.
To step back.
Why?
Some more than other.
Why?
Some, because they all have different personalities, and some might impact the business in a way that might not be detrimental. And I don't think they would do it on purpose, but it's a tough situation and a difficult situation when you're trying to lead a family member into a position of responsibility and turn over the reins to them. And sometimes that requires, I think, outside assistance. In my case, it was Chuck, a non-family member, who could advise me. But you've got to have family members who are coachable, and not all family members are coachable.
So let's talk about that. So you have these family members that are coachable, and you have family members that aren't. I mean, is there any guidance you might say to the person that's, you've made this decision with your own children, your parents made a decision, thinking about how to assess that and still keep the family together, right? Because these things there's a fragility in all relationships that has got to be, respected, and yet you have to do what's right for those 12,000 employees and the customers.
Yeah. So at least the listeners think that my family members aren't coachable.
Well, some are. We haven't named any names.
Some are more coachable than others, but they are all coachable, just to varying degrees, and that changes over time. I'm seeing that change right before my eyes. So I think that's important. And whether you're the coachee or the coacher, patience is probably the strongest ingredient and skill that will get you through to the end goal or success goal.
Okay, you're saying that to the owner, the let's call it the parent that has stepped back, or the parents that have stepped back. The biggest skill that they can have, or the biggest takeaway for them, is have some patience.
Yeah.
Okay.
Both parties.
With determining who's coachable within that family structure. So you might have, like, I've got a few kids, and they're different ages, obviously. So they become coachable at different times, sometimes because of age or their life's experience.
And in different areas. Some areas are not coachable. Other areas they are. It depends on what their hot buttons are, or where they're broken. And let's get back to one point. And I think one thing that really makes a difference is having an outside party that's trusted and has a relationship, that's built a relationship with the decision maker as well as with the people that are being affected by the decisions.
What's the purpose of the outside person? Is that just to help drive the decision, or to help facilitate a positive outcome?
It's to both, to drive the conversation in ways that, for example, the owner or decision maker might not be obvious to them, or they have the built-in biases, that a parent has. I still look at my daughter and son as kids. And my parents probably, even though I'm nearly 70, they look at me as, that's my little kid, My mom still does that. So it's really hard to have an objective view and to ask some of the questions and get the dialogue moving that is absolutely necessary. There has to be this safe environment that is created where the parties can talk about the challenges and the issues. And that's really hard to do without a third party in the mix.
Yeah, so when your parents back off from the operations, and then ultimately there's a change in control too. You ended up buying the company from a group at one point. What happened then? Because part of it is the management control or management duties, and the other part is the ownership.
Yeah. Well, we made a massive skip in time in this conversation.
Right.
I left the company. And then came back, and I came back to, so this was the second time that I came back to the company after being gone for 7 years, and we'd had an economic downturn. There had been no family involvement except for at the board level, and the business was languishing. In fact, it was pretty close to, it could have gone into bankruptcy. And that's happened twice in our career, once under my grandfather's leadership and once under non-family leadership. And it was a really very difficult time. And it required, there were some things that had occurred within the organization besides the economic downturn that weren't being addressed. And it needed somebody who understood the business, but more importantly, somebody who understood the culture of the business. And the culture of the business had been damaged, and it needed to be repaired. So we set out at first repairing that damage, and then getting back to what made the company really successful, and that was great products and great customer service.
So it sounds like it needed a level of decisiveness. The business had gone through the Great Recession and then was surviving at some level, but nobody at the helm to make the strategic decisions around rebuilding the culture or running, driving the culture in the right direction.
Right. It needs somebody who is vested in the success of the business.
And who owned the company at that time? Was it still your parents?
Parents were still under control of the parents. Although there were 5 of us. Myself, I'm the oldest. I have 4 sisters. The 5 of us actually held all the common shares.
Okay.
The parents held the preferred shares and the voting shares. So they controlled the company at that time when I returned for the second time. And they were retired. They were on the board, and I think that they were trying to figure out, do we keep this a family business or do we sell this? Mm-hmm. And how do we be fair to our 5 children? And that was the tough decision that they were faced with. And it was my life's dream that I was facing, acquiring the company so that I could take it where I think it will be successful long term. And that took a lot of dialogue. It took outside intervention. It took the pressing of time. My parents were aging. They wanted to get on with their lives. They were in their 80s by that time, and we had a dysfunctional board, a very large board.
Why was the board dysfunctional? You have heavy family members. You and your 4 sisters, and your mom and dad. That's 7. You're all board members. What the rest of the board? What was it made up of?
Well, it was dysfunctional because number one, it was too large. Okay. There were multiple reasons, and I was part of the problem. I was part of the problem from two perspectives. When I returned to the business, the family insisted that all 5 children be on the board, so the board had to get large. We had to have 11-member board because there's 5 of us and 6, so there was 11 people, and that required us to bring additional people on. And I thought, well, gee, it'd be great to have some industry experts, people who had worked in the industry, and so I tapped a few people that I knew of and respected and brought them onto the board. But that became a problem for me because they had their way of doing it. They felt that the way they had done it was the way it should be. So I was often at odds with the outside directors that I brought on, because I'm not a traditional thinker. Mm-hmm. I like to do things differently. And then you had 5 family members, and they all wanted and had their own ideas of both how do we make this successful, and how do I establish my purpose in life and get my independence in life. So they were dependent on the business and the success of the business for their own emotional self-worth as well as their financial self-worth. And those are very critical and important subjects, and everybody had their own idea of the way we should go. So you had 5 outside directors that were looking at 5 owners and trying to say, okay, maybe we should do this or maybe we should do that. And I don't mean to make it sound like the outside directors they couldn't make decisions. They could, and they actually did. But it was a horrendous several years.
Well, what can we learn from this? You got too many board members, maybe in this particular situation, too heavy in the family. I mean, is the family, they all wanted the business to succeed? You said for different reasons. You said that's one of the subjects. Like, talk to us about that. What does that look like? And maybe there's some common things that we can take away that the rest of us might go, how to deal with that for next time.
Yeah, well, if I understand your question, the needs of the family and the owners have to be directed towards the business, and if they're directed towards where's my future, you've got conflicts and problems.
The goals of the company need to be paramount in running a business like Raley's, a large size business.
Yeah. And sometimes your personal needs cloud judgment or slow decisions down. And like I learned that when I was involved in Prosper Business Magazine, a business I knew nothing about. Highly detailed business, didn't know, wasn't sure, wanted it to be successful, so I slowed the decision making down, or don't make the decision. And it's detrimental to the business. You can't do that. So the business has to be free to move forward. It's got to have management that can go forward and do what they want. And everybody has to trust the management team. In this case, I'm not sure they trusted the management team because I was their brother.
Yes. Okay, so that's interesting. So the board's big and different interests, some self-interest rather than just simply the company's success. But the board is functioning slowly and not empowering the executives to be able to do what they need to do to win.
Yeah, they were arguing with the executives.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I guess I'm thinking of the takeaway here is a board needs to be empowering to the management team, or they need to change out the management. I mean, is that kind of the thing?
Yeah. In this case, that was hard to do because it was a family member.
Yeah. Okay. Anything you would have done differently there?
Well,
for yourself, or that you would advise maybe your parents to do differently, since they really had a lot of the control at the point.
Wow. I'm not sure that it was the best decision to have all five of us on the board. And in fact, two of them dropped off by themselves, but they replaced themselves with in-laws, which exacerbated the problem. And my parents they're great people, they're great leaders, and I've inherited a lot of their skills. But when I was dealing with this skill set that they have of hands-off, they're hands-off managers. They let people do what they want to do, and they only interfere when something is seriously wrong. That's tough because I wanted them to be more decisive and say, this is what we need to do. And they wouldn't. They just kind of let things play out.
Do you think a second generation is inherently less decisive than the first?
Yeah, probably. What do you think? What's your experience?
Yeah, well, I'm thinking that you have this gray hair in the room, and so they're obviously have a little bit more wisdom about business generally. And mom and dad have always made the big calls. And so I can picture that situation where, consensus, everybody's waiting for consensus all of a sudden. And if it comes slowly, it comes slowly. And we don't want to rock the boat.
Right.
So I'd say generally.
Yeah.
But I know there's got to be other times when new maverick types come through. You ended up being the maverick of your sibling set. Obviously, you've bought the company and pivoted, and it's made tremendous strides. But it was slow for you to grab it and negotiate that deal. I suppose, it took time in its own way.
Yeah, I wanted it to happen a lot faster
than
it did. So that's that patience part that I spoke of earlier. I had to learn how to be patient, step back, and let things happen because they weren't going to happen at the speed that I wanted them, and I needed to learn to just be patient and persevere through the difficult decisions and the difficult situations. And eventually, it became very apparent through some board. Actually, through one, we hired an outside consultant that worked with boards to lead us through a board strategic plan. And the outcome of that was that the business needs to be sold. It needs to have one direction, and we either sell it to the public or we sell it to our brother. Mm-hmm. Or our son, and let him run with it. And I was willing to do that. I was willing to take on that responsibility. And so the family had to work at how do we make this happen, because we don't want money from the outside. We don't want private equity coming in to make this transaction happen. That means the business has to be sold at a discount, which is fair because nobody had control. But that was hard. That was a hard thing for all of us to, let me say it was hard for my sisters because they were the ones who were taking the discount. I wasn't selling my share. The company was buying their shares back. So arriving at a price that was fair was hard, and I was not involved in that decision or that discussion directly. We had a long tenured outside director who, after the board retreat, it became very clear to him that we need to move on. We need to have one agenda. The best way to do this is either sell the business to Michael or sell the business to somebody else. And of course, he and everybody else knew that my parents' heart desire was to have it go to a family member and remain a family business. That was their desire. So how do we do that? And he walked the family through that process. I wouldn't call it a walk, but
yeah. Well, thinking about that, so the sisters had a different agenda than you did. What was their attitude toward you during this time?
They love their brother. Let's see, how do I say this? I did not treat them the way they probably I should have treated my sisters growing up. I was kind of their big brother who bullied them and teased them, but we're a very close family. In a strange way, we don't have a lot of interaction except for when we get together as a family for holidays, and then we're very close and we enjoy one another's company. We always have, and so that was kind of the paramount feeling towards each other. We love one another, but these were life-changing decisions, and they were hard, and it was difficult for them to let go of the business because that was their identity. It was my identity. We grew up being, Tom Raley's grandchildren.
Right.
And so we identified with a business. I was acquiring my identity. They were kind of selling their identity.
And by selling their identity, they would get a financial payoff, but then they weren't associated with the business any longer.
In a public way. So, they were gaining something that they wanted, and that was their independence, their financial independence. They could set their own direction and invest where they want and live their own lifestyle. So that was a big plus for them. Letting go of being an owner of Raley's was a big deal. It's a big emotional deal. But they still own a small piece. We kept a very small percentage for each of them. It's a legacy piece.
Do you think they feel like they don't have it as an identity anymore?
Actually, I think they do have an identity, and that was a transition and a journey for them. They had to come to that understanding that they weren't really giving up that identity. They still think very seriously about their legacy, the legacy of their grandfather and now their mother and father, of giving back to this community and being a part of this community and seeing a business that's thriving and changing this community for the better. I think they've come to that place where they now feel they are a part of that.
So you're saying, like, as kids, they felt that maybe you were a bully, or you may think that you were a bully yourself. But then during
trust me, I was.
Well, you were. But during this process, was that still the feel? Did that kind of come through in this process? Even though you brought in a third party, you weren't doing it directly.
Yeah, no, it affected.
Okay.
Anything?
Okay, so for the person out there that's thinking, okay, I want to do this, I'm bringing in the third party, their siblings that are going to get more of a payday, if you will, versus this shared, I guess, role in leadership. I mean, how would we do it differently? Because it's obviously worked for the best of the employees and for the community and so on. We've won. We have Raley's. But, I mean, how could you do it differently where you could still get through it more smoothly, or is it just part of the way it has to happen?
It's obviously the way it had to happen for us. And I don't know that it's the best way or the only way. I'm sure there are other ways that it can be done. I mean, there's examples of families that have stayed involved in the businesses from an ownership perspective and financial perspective. With us, there was a strong need to keep investing in the business because it become highly competitive. So that precluded income coming out of the company.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're left with less income for the owners, or you sell your shares and you get your income.
Gotcha.
And that was probably the right decision for us.
Okay, well, here we are. Let's fast forward. It obviously worked out for the best for Raley's. The overall company has done extremely well. Now we're in this new environment where brick and mortar is getting disrupted in a big way, right? We have Amazon buying Whole Foods. We talked about one of my portfolio companies, Trifecta Nutrition, earlier, where they're thriving with meal delivery, organic meal delivery. As you're the visionary, how do you see Raley's dealing with the onset of this innovation, this new innovation, this continuing innovation?
By being innovative and being open to doing things a new way. But what's really helped, Mark, is, we always stood for, and that was what was easy to make the turnaround, was great products and great customer service. We have the best employees and team members in the world. I mean, they're awesome. When you go into a Raley store, 9 times out of 10, you feel like you're wanted there. Mm-hmm. And that's because of the culture of the organization.
I was there last night, and there was no doubt. I go to the one in Granite Bay or Loomis, but I mean, it's always great service.
Yeah. So I intuitively knew that was what we had to get back to focus on, and that was kind of our unstated mission and purpose. But I knew that we needed something even more, because the world ahead looked margins are shrinking. There's more competitors. It's not just the grocery store down the street. It's online and it's worldwide. So we needed something a little bit more to keep us motivated and keep us trying to do things differently. And that was by becoming a purpose-driven company. And I think I might have talked a little bit last time we were together, knowing why you go to work every day. Why do you go to work? What is it you're doing? Why are you doing it? And we looked at our past. I looked at my past, and I said health and wellness. That's what it's food's about health, and our health in this nation is deteriorated. So we set a mission that says we're going to be all about helping our customers make healthier choices. And what I want to do next, which we haven't done, is define some just causes. So I think if on your mission you've got some just causes that are not attainable, but will drive you.
They're not easily attainable. They're
not. They can't be attainable.
It's impossible.
It's an infinite game. There's no winning or losing. You just keep going.
Okay.
And when we define those, that's going to really that's what the company marches to, is that just cause, or those series of just causes around your purpose of health and wellness. And it becomes a balancing act. How do you do that and stay profitable, but you never lose sight of your
Okay, so that's interesting.
Cause.
Infinite purpose. So a purpose that is is not really reachable. A continually more healthy world. Yeah. Is that your purpose?
Well, our purpose is to infuse life with health and happiness by changing the way the world eats one plate at a time. And there's an assumption there that's healthy eating. A just cause, it would be a little bit more specific, and we haven't defined those, but they'd be on that mission of creating that, creating life that's health and happiness.
So that comes from your heart. Obviously, we've talked about this before with Market 515 and putting the products that are more healthy and easier, in on the shelf in a place where we want to grab them more often. So I knew that was your heart. But making that the why of these 12,000 people sounds like a little bit of, I don't know, is that a heavy lift?
It seemed like an overwhelming lift when we started it about 4 years ago, when we really started exercising that. The purpose was a little bit more than 4 years ago, but it seemed overwhelming. But what's happened is as we talk about our purpose in public, like today, or online and through messaging, through our advertising and social media, the more we get that message out to the general public, the people who want to be part of that mission start applying. And we're seeing that. We're seeing that starting with the senior executives, and then all the way down at store level. We're attracting people from Whole Foods.
Yeah.
Because they're losing their purpose a little bit. And they want to be a part of something that's bigger than themselves, a part of the mission that it resonates with them. And so it attracts those people to become a team member with us. And so it doesn't seem overwhelming to me anymore. I just wish it would happen faster.
Yeah, it's one at a time. We call that at Haiti Biz, we call that marrying the why. Because a lot of times as an investor, I'm putting business partners together, or I'm becoming a business partner. And if we can't find common ground on the purpose, then the relationship is not going to be nearly as strong. So finding a way to do that, but you've got this existing workforce that maybe came to work with other things on their mind besides why.
Right. And believe me, we have more of those than we have those who came because it's about passion. But even those team members they're hearing their lives are changing. They're hearing us talk about eating healthier, making better choices, getting sugar out of your diet. And their lives are being changed and transformed. And we highlight those people in communications. So at store level, we'll pick out examples of people who have actually changed their life. They changed the way they've eaten. It's had an impact on them, and then we will bring them in. We'll do a video, and we'll disseminate that video to the company as an example of. And it just kind of multiplies.
Now, are these are customers that shop at Raley's?
No, these are team members.
Team members that eat the Raley's food, and
they drink
culture
the Raley's tea.
Yeah, they drank the coffee and the tea, or the Kool-Aid, I was going to say. But their lives are changing. That's an interesting story. So highlighting that. Okay. So, but now you've got to keep up. So societally, I mean, I think you're not the only one. Obviously, a lot of us are trying to stay healthy, and longevity is so much more, I guess, on the front of a lot of our minds these days, and that's beginning to happen. But the whole pivot to the technology is a piece of the business that needs to be addressed. The innovation that goes along with getting the meals more readily through delivery and so on, convenience. How are you addressing the need for improved convenience? Is that a big deal to you guys today?
Yeah, I think convenience is in the forefront of our customers' minds, and so we have to always be asking, how can we make this more convenient for them, and healthier, because that's part of our mission. Yeah. So when we're at store level, we're looking at ways to improve the product offering that is more convenient for the customer. For example, we're having more meal components for sale, so that a customer can come in and quickly assemble made pieces of a meal.
Okay, more fresh, pre-made pieces. Yeah. Okay.
Or pieces that are assembled and then they finish cooking them. There's both cooked and uncooked. That makes it more convenient. So there are inherent challenges with that, because there's off-site preparation, there's sanitation and food safety issues that slow some of that movement down, but you have to be willing to take those risks and try new and different things, which is why we have, one of our success factors was investing in online shopping really early on, and creating what's called e-cart within our company. It's a click and collect. You order online and go pick it up when it's convenient for you. We've deployed that chain-wide, so it's easy for our customers. We've gone through many renditions of the online site so that it's made it easier for them to shop. For example, we have descriptors that allow a person to check a box, and if they're interested in gluten-free or paleo diets, they just check that, and they only see the items that are paleo and or gluten-free. Whatever their health criteria is, it makes it easier and faster for them to shop. Then somebody shops it for them and they pick it up. We're investing in online delivery. We're doing business with locally with Food Jets,
yes,
to do delivery, and Instacart and other areas. So yeah, you have to be willing to look beyond the horizon. For example, it costs us a lot of money. We lose a lot of money on delivery.
Okay.
A lot. But our statistics show that customer is a valuable customer who spends a lot of money when they're in the store and they're doing their own shopping. They have huge baskets. So we're willing to lose on those convenience baskets in order to maintain and keep that customer and build that loyalty with that customer because they're a valuable customer. So building loyalty is probably one of the biggest challenges, and convenience is one of them. And technology is another.
Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of the shift to things going online, how fast is your shift? Are you going as fast as you'd like it? Do you expect it to accelerate?
I'm pleased with the speed that our online shopping is going. It's dramatically ramped up. It's growing at 20+%. In some stores, it's reached 10% of our business. It's big in industry wide. So it's the wave of the future. We've got to find how do we lower costs to do that, and that's where pieces of technology might fit in to help us reduce the costs so that it's more profitable for us.
I have a couple other closing thoughts here, or questions, I guess, that are, I'm kind of bouncing around. The family business is very, very interesting. I think we definitely got some good takeaways about, the board size and how to approach the family business. Obviously, there's a movement on the convenience, and your purpose-driven stuff is unbelievable. But that hits me at home as a guy that's trying to, put a couple extra years on his life, hopefully. But
you're looking great, by the way.
Well, you just keep battling. You get to be our age, you just keep battling. A little bit of exercise and eating at Raley's, you're going to be okay, I suppose.
You obviously don't have a lot of sugar in your diet.
But my wife would argue with that. So,
okay. Well, maybe you have a high metabolism.
Yeah. So I snack at the end of the night. One of my bad habits.
Well, that's the best time to take it in.
It is.
Yes, you want your carbohydrates at the end of your day.
I did not know that.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It helps you sleep. Number one. You don't want your carbohydrates beginning of the day like a breakfast because it's throwing your glucose up and down and all over the place. So.
Okay, so if you're gonna snack,
it makes you hungry throughout the day. Yeah.
To eat some carbs in the early.
And don't snack all day long.
Okay.
Try to get it down to 2 meals a day. Don't eat breakfast.
Yeah, fasting. So intermittent fasting.
Yes.
So if you go, 12 hours without eating or 16, that's actually good for you now. I hear that. They used to tell us you're supposed to snack throughout the day.
Now you're on my subject. Oh.
So how do you do it? Because this is one of my favorite subjects.
So I've been in a ketogenic diet for over 3 years now.
Okay.
I lost 40 pounds.
Wow. You look good.
I've kept it off. Thank you. The last 10 was tough. I kind of plateaued, and intermittent fasting was very, very helpful. It really helped, and it helps with my clarity in my mind too. So I stay in ketosis, that's part of the ketogenic diet. Mm-hmm. I've eliminated a lot of sugars, not all. I've learned my body, so I have a balance. I know how much and when I can interject carbohydrates into my diet. It's generally
you do it by how you feel, or do you have a measurement tool that you have one of these?
I think it's imperative to have a measurement tool at the beginning so you know what's going on. I used a breathalyzer. They're expensive, but it's one of the better.
Okay.
It's not as expensive as the blood meters. Those are really expensive, and the urine things are not really good at all. They're not.
So set a
accurate.
baseline so you can, as you make these changes, you can see how it affects your blood sugar and so on.
Yes, and so. I can switch back and forth from glucose to ketones very easily, and it helps me stay healthy and active, and I'm not lethargic. I've got energy, and the most important thing is I'm not gaining 10 pounds every 10 years.
Yeah, that's no fun. Well, they say, right, that I've just got done reading this book on longevity. I think it's called Longevity, and they talk about exercising hard and eating less, right? That's kind of like two of the basic things that help you live longer is don't have a lot of extra body weight and exercise real hard on a regular basis.
I would change that from exercising hard to weightlifting.
Oh, two weightlifting.
Yeah, not aerobics. Aerobics is kind of a waste of time.
Really? Mm-hmm. Okay, I did not know that. Yeah. We have to bring back and talk a little science. Maybe we'll bring in one of my investments is telemed to you. No, I'll bring my doctor on. The three of us could have a discussion about that.
I would love it. No, I'm not opposed to having. I do aerobic too, but I keep it to a minimum, and it's not my method of losing weight. It's for cardiovascular health. I'm not pounding out the calories to lose weight.
Interesting. Okay, great subject. Okay, so we're talking about my portfolio. Let's talk about me for a little bit. One of the companies I'm looking at, and a couple of them that I'm invested into, are like consumer product type companies that either sell to Raley's or would like to sell to Raley's. And so one of them is a health type of product. One of them is whiskey. The other one's a health type. Yeah. Do you guys sell whiskey over there?
Oh, yeah. So whiskey is my deal.
Oh, okay. I think we might even sell to you guys. Legato whiskey might even sell to you guys. I think, or we're trying to get into some of your stores. But a different one that I'm looking at is a pudding that it's called Chia pudding. Yeah.
Chia pudding. Yeah.
I'm looking at that right now because I hear it's healthy, and the founder is a rock star.
Chia seeds are a great addition to a diet for omega-3s. We get way too many omega-6s in our diet from, in my case, it was peanut butter. That's like 100% omega-6s. And when that gets out of whack in your body, it's not good. You need to balance. You don't want to be all omega-3s, but you need to balance for brain health as well as gut health and other reasons. So chia is a great source of omega-3s. Are really, really high in omega-3s. And as I was telling somebody earlier today, they don't have a lot of flavor, so they can be added to a product.
Okay.
So I'm actually interested to see this product. Maybe I can add it to my peanut butter and bring that ratio of 3s to 6s in line.
Okay. Well, we have to make the introduction then. But typically, though, just from let's say somebody else is out there listening and they're sort of thinking the same thing. I have these products. They're healthy. Or I'm from Sacramento. What gets me in the door at Raley's? I know you don't have time to meet with all these people. You have a team that deals with this. But what kinds of products do you look for? Is there any product that gives you a little bit better chance of getting in the door at Raley's? I was thinking local might make a difference. I mean, obviously healthy makes some difference.
Yeah, those are the two keys.
Okay.
Those are hot buttons: local and healthy. And then we'll listen to. I mean, local is obviously if you're within 100 miles of Sacramento, that's local.
Okay.
More than that, and it's getting a little problematic. But
right.
And healthy, we'll listen. We'll listen to why do you believe it's healthy, and why should it be in the diet? And if it's interesting and it's not an area that is overpopulated, the thought that comes to my mind is coffee. I mean, there's a lot of coffees out there that are locally roasted, they're sustainably produced, they're fair trade. There's just like a bazillion coffee companies. So there needs to be some uniqueness about it that helps to get through the chatter and into a buyer's office.
Somebody's got to want to buy it. I mean, otherwise I guess it's just going to sit there. You have stuff you tried, and I guess just sits on the shelf, and you're like, sorry, it didn't sell, guys.
Right. So they need to find out who at Raley's is the category manager, the buyer for that particular category, whatever it is, and try to make a connection by phone and set up an appointment.
Yeah.
If that doesn't work, call me.
You heard it, folks. That's very cool. I mean, you're such an I talked about that at the beginning. So authentic, and today we got really into the weeds there, the details of the family.
Hope we didn't get lost.
Yeah, no, I loved it. See, that's really interesting to me. Is I have a number of these companies. Some are family, some are not. Some are more just investments, but how to deal with it with my own kids and my grandkids, because I've got such a close family as well. But you want all the sisters or brothers and sisters and cousins to get along. I mean, it's at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, is our family, right?
Well, I'm going to have to come back because, we didn't even get into what am I going to do?
Okay. Well, why don't we close on, okay, let's make sure that our, the Sacramento knows what Mike Teel is going to begin doing. He's the chief visionary, but beyond that, or including that, what are you going to do? We'll tease this for the next next show.
Yeah. How are we going to succeed? How's this company who's going to own it in the years ahead? That's a big question. I'm faced with what my parents were faced with just 10 years ago. So that's the decisions that are before my wife, Julie, and I. We have options. It's our desire to see the business remain family owned. But you never know. I don't have an answer to that. And so I've got those tough questions facing me. I have 3 children that are biological. I have other children that are not biological, that are part of the family, and all should and want to benefit from our ownership of this company. So these are challenging questions that we're faced with that keep us up at night at times. And there's no easy solution or answer to it. It's a journey. It's not a decision. It's a journey. And we're plugging along on that decision. So I'll have to come back when I know where it's headed.
I love it. Mike Teel, he's the Chief Visionary Officer of Raley's. So much success, so much humility. What a purpose, making society better. And I think one of the things that really stands out to me is those 12,000 employees have a guy like you at the helm. Very lucky.
Thank
We
you,
all are lucky
Mark.
to have
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
You're a gem to our community, Mike.
Thank you. It's
Thank
because
you.
of them, though, not me.
Yeah. Well,
They make the difference.
yes, I can only imagine, and I can attest
Thank you.
to that as well as a customer. So thank you very much, Mike.
You're welcome.
Thanks for watching today's show. My goal for every episode is that you find a takeaway, something tangible you can use in your business today. And if you have a comment about a favorite takeaway, feel free to put it in the box below. And if you have a topic that you'd like me to bring up on the show, don't forget to let me know. And also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to learn more about entrepreneurship. Because at Haney Biz, we are always by your side.